and gentlemen.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Scottish Fire Brigades Heritage Trust, I'd like to welcome you here to the Beacon Arts Centre in Greenock to our annual charity concert. I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors who through their generosity has made this concert possible. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our invited guests. We have Deputy Chief Officer Sarah O'Donnell of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Deputy Chief Officer Ian McMeekin from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Provost Drew McKenzie from Inverclyde, and Lieutenant Colonel John Donovan from the Army Benevolent Fund. I'd like to thank our Heritage Trust volunteers who have devoted their time and efforts in staffing and making this concert possible. And last but no least, I'd like to thank each and every one of you in the audience tonight for coming along to support this. Thank you for your support, it's very much appreciated. We have here the band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland to play for us tonight. We're honoured and privileged that the band has once again agreed to come and play for us. The band members are all serving soldiers in the British Army. In addition to being musicians, the band members take on the role of battlefield medics in times of conflict. All proceeds from tonight's concert will go to the Scottish Fire Brigades Heritage Trust and the Army Benevolent Fund, the Soldiers' Charity. I'm pleased to announce tonight that next year the Royal Regiment of Scotland will be the first ever recipients to receive the Freedom of Inverclyde. A ceremony will take place in the summer of 2026. The Royal Regiment of Scotland will march through Greenock, followed by a civic reception, and there will be military bands playing at this prestigious event. This historic event was at the instigation of Councillor Graham Brooks and Provost Drew McKenzie and had received unanimous support from every councillor in Inverclyde. So please watch out for this event next summer and come along and support this historic occasion. So without further ado, I will pass you over to the band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland and to the Director of Music, Major Esther Hayes.
Good evening, sirs, ma'ams, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all well. Oh, I'm just going to try that again. I'm not sure there's anybody out there. Let me just try that again. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that is way better. Well, and welcome for me to Greenock, my first time here, and what a wonderful place we have here. Yes? It's a great honour to be invited to play here today, especially in support of the Scottish Fire Heritage Trust. I hope that we're going to raise lots of money for them this evening, but please be assured we've got a fun-packed show for you this evening, both reflective, but also later on an opportunity to tap those toes out there as well. We started off with a march, as we would do traditionally, and that was called the Black Granite March. It was in fact written to honour those who died in the Vietnam War. But a lovely piece of music, and it is meant to be triumphant. Now, the next piece of music is, again, traditionally an overture, and it looks at the characteristics of the sea. So quite appropriate here. I know we're on an estuary, the Firth of Clyde, but it looks at those times when that can be very tranquil, but I can imagine it can be quite stormy and boisterous. So although we're not near the Pacific and near the Atlantic, I'm sure this Pacific overture you'll love very much. Thank you very much. Well, I need a bit of a rest after that. Like I said, I'm quite new to the unit, so I've only been here since June. My previous unit did not have this amount of uniform on. This is quite a lot. I started out setting aside an hour to put this on. Woo! And it gets very warm, so I'm now a bit older, so I thought I'd go and take a rest if you don't mind. But don't worry, we have somebody else coming on to do a bit of conducting. Now for this unit, we've had quite a changeover of the top three, so it's been myself. But anybody come last year to this particular? Yeah, oh, we've got, yes. You'll remember, so you had Major Brendan Wheeler. So I'm the new Brendan Wheeler, called Esther, not Brendan. And we had Bandmaster Chris Brown last year. Unfortunately, he's come to the end of his time. So he's felt the need to retire. And so we have a new person. So I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of the new bandmaster, and that is Warrant Officer Class 2, Faye Snowden.
So, have you enjoyed the first two numbers? Yes. Shall we keep that energy going? Yes. Absolutely. So our next piece is going to take us to back to the 1960s, featuring some music of one of Britain's most iconic bands, the Beatles. Yes. Excellent. So this medley that we're going to play for you, it features all the classics, the haunting melodies, the upbeat numbers. It's got something for everyone. I encourage you to sing along. Please, because there's going to be more audience participation later on, so this is the test. So please, warm up those voices and enjoy Beatles' Echoes of an Era. So we're going to have a nice, chilled few moments. Please enjoy and reflect on the music of Brothers in Arms. moving swiftly on to our next piece, which is Crimson Tide. So we're going to liven things back up again. We've had our reflective moment. So this piece is going to take us underwater to the world of nuclear submarines. Rather bizarre, I know. So this piece, it's the music's from Hans Zimmer and features the score from the film from 1995 of the same title, Crimson Tide. So for this piece, be prepared for bold brass fanfares, energetic rhythms, and lots and lots of energy, and then a little bit of calm as well. But this piece reflects, like I said, the world underwater, conflict underwater in nuclear submarine warfare. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Crimson Tide. a leaf out of my boss's book and go have a short break now. And I will welcome the Director of Music back to the stage, Major Esther Hayes.
Thank you very much. How do you think the new bandmaster did? Oh, very well, yeah. Clap on, pretty good. 5 gold stars, do we think? Yes. Well done. Thank you very much, fans. So who was able to attend the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo this year? Oh, nobody? Oh, we have a few, yeah. Managed to catch up on TV? Do you recognise some faces? No? Under the cover of a wee bonnet. So we had the honour of partaking this year, which was absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I would advise that you go on there, perhaps onto YouTube. If you haven't got YouTube, get some type of child to get you onto YouTube. It's usually the best way, and it is a fantastic show. Very proud, it's the 75th anniversary. We're also proud to take part with other nations. And one nation for us that stuck out was Ukraine. It was the orchestra of the naval forces that performed. And the Edinburgh Tattoo had wanted them to perform for many years, but obviously things aren't too good at home, if we put it that way. So they weren't able to commit, but they were able to commit this year. And as an example of their resilience, the day after they got to Redford Barracks in Edinburgh, for rehearsals, their base had actually in Odessa had been bombed. So really respect them for carrying on and going on with music, because we all know that music is soft power, one international language that brings everybody together. So really, as a tribute to them, and especially to our musical brothers and sisters in the Ukrainian forces, we'd like to play this tune, which is a prayer for Ukraine. Beautiful. I hope that they would appreciate that. Now, there's perhaps one bit of instrumentation that you might be expecting that is not happened yet. Any ideas? The pipes. Well done to the young man here. Yes, of course. We're going to have a pipe tune next. So it is my honour to introduce you two pipers. They are from the pipes and drums of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. May I introduce them? We have the Pipe Major McCurdy, and Corporal Jardine. Thank you very much. Sorry, just quite forgot what I was doing next. I was so enthralled with those pipers. Weren't they fantastic, ladies and gentlemen? Another round of applause, I think. Now, I was just wondering if you've noticed, apart from the two pipers, there's a couple of people, well, I want to say different uniform, but I do need to say thank you to two people who've helped out this evening. One's from the Highland Band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland, one's from the Lowland Band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland, so nice mix there, I think, we've got. So if you mind standing up, one Officer Class 2, Gregor Blaney. Right there in the back. Gregor helps us out on many occasions. He's a very talented musician. He often helps us out with their piano accompanying, where our youngsters are going through, we have to do trade tests and so forth, and he's fantastic. So thank you very much, Gregor. And then we have Corporal Mark Angus, who's going to stand up right on that. Now Mark he actually retired from the regular army about 2 weeks ago, so he's obviously missing us. But he's thankfully joined the reserves, which does mean he can come and help us out now and again, which is fantastic. So once again, thank you very much, Mark. I do have to also thank somebody who's in the wings, well, two people actually. And if you see what's called VT, I have no clue what VT stands for. It's some trendy phrase apparently for big telly. So you can all see that in the background. That doesn't just happen. We have two youngsters who make that happen. One young lady, I'm going to say musician Erin Gunn, but she's now musician Erin Cook. Got married last weekend. She's probably absolutely exhausted, so not here tonight. And then we've got musician Laurie Edwards, he might creep his head out the back. He hasn't got a uniform on, so he might risk being told off. So thank you very much to the platoons for putting some fantastic VT together, big telly in other words, with some fantastic images which really enhance our music that we're playing today. So I hope you're having a good time so far. Yes. Oh, good. Unfortunately, this is the last of the first half. Oh, nearly there. I'm just going to try that again. Okay, I think we can improve. It's all about improving, isn't it? This is going to be the last of the first half. But don't worry, we come back in the second half. So, get some drinks down. You alcoholic or non-alcoholic, okay? And buy some raffle tickets. Lots of raffle tickets. So we can raise some money. So 20 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. That's 20. That's not half an hour. 20. But for the last piece, really, we're going to look at that beautiful countryside that you have here. It's from the Hymn of the Highlands, and this particular movement looks at that wee little village, Dundonald, really looking at that rolling, lovely countryside that you have in Scotland, and are so lucky. So this is Philip Sparks, Dundonald.
the music of Dundonald, which, as I'm sure you'll agree, was really rousing and energetic and is, to capture all the scenery of Scotland. We're going to do the same thing, but in a much calmer way. So the next piece that we're going to play for you this evening is called Perthshire Majesty. It's a very reflective and evocative piece that it conjures images of the mountains, the beautiful Perthshire Highlands, the glens, all of the beautiful countryside that your mind can imagine. And tonight it will be featuring, as we've had many soloists this evening, but we've got another guest soloist this evening, which is W2 Blaney on the accordion, who will be doing the solo for us in this piece. So I hope you enjoy. Cast your minds back, let images of rolling glens come to your mind. This is Perthshire Majesty. some more singing. Because you did such a good job in the first half. We're going to turn to another pop and rock legend of British music, that is Sir Elton John. Yes, this arrangement that we're going to play for you next, it captures everything. It's got its upbeat melodies, its driving rhythms, and some softer, tender bits, but it just captures all of the iconic music that made him a true global phenomenon. That's quite a hard word to say, isn't it? Phenomenon. So, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy, and again, sing along when you can to Elton John. ask you to sing in this next one. So the next piece that we're going to be doing is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Made famous by Judy Garland in the film The Wizard of Oz, that smash hit film. This arrangement It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more driving, but still has those same wonderful melodies that we all know and love. The song from the film has often been used in recent times as a symbol of hope and optimism, and that there is always a brighter future, maybe just around the corner. So it's just a little sentiment that we could possibly just all bear in mind. But less from me, more from the band. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Welcome back, everybody. How many raffle tickets did we buy? Lots, I hope. Just checking. Get that. What do we win? Well, there's two very nice ice buckets made out of the fire officers' helmets, a big bar of chocolate, some whiskey. Oh, that's popular. Anyway, before you get to know the raffle prizes, as the bandmaster said, we've got musician Anne Farron here. Adam, I believe you got the fan club in today. Oh, now is the fan club from Essex. Oh, so who's from Essex here? Fan club are being very quiet. Yes, Adam's from Essex, all the way down south. Been in the army, how long? 2.5 years. 2.5 years. Ooh, Sound of a crow, it's a little in-joke. So Adam's going to play this wonderful piece of music called Virtuosity, and it's from one of your favourite trumpet players performing this, and it'll be absolutely fantastic. gentlemen, it's the time we've been waiting for. It's the results of the raffle. The final piece of the evening, and the great opportunity to bring back our pipers, Pipe Major McCurdy and Corporal Jardine. Of course, if a Scottish tune around the world was not on the map, this certainly put it on the map for the whole world. And of course, it's Dougie McLean's The Gale and the setting that is from Last of the Mohicans. I really hope you enjoy this last performance of this evening. You've been a great audience, and thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, thank you very much. You've been a fantastic audience. I'd firstly like to say thank you to our pipers here from the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. They've been fantastic. I'd like to say thank you to our bandmaster, WO2 Faye Snowden. Also fantastic. I noticed she picked the better program. And I'd also like to say thank you very much to our assistant band sergeant major this evening. He has our band sergeant major's not here; she's on a course. So we've got Colour Sergeant Billy Beaumont, who's been running the show, keeping us all together and in the right place. So thank you very much, Billy. Stand up. And one final thank you. Thank you to the men and women behind me. They are fantastic, very hardworking and very talented. And they have just been excellent tonight. I'm sure you'd agree. So thank you. We'll finish in the traditional manner with the regimental marches of the Royal Regiment of Scotland.